Trump appears to have found himself in a major financial windfall in one of the most hilarious circumstances of all time. Let's go ahead and put this up there on the screen. It appears that Donald Trump is about to, quote, make a new fortune with the public listing of Truth Social. According to the financial documents that are coming forward in the filing, Trump's investment in Truth Social, which is held by a SPAC, is worth roughly $3 billion. This is after investors in the SPAC have now approved a plan to take Truth Social public, putting him, quote, one step closer to the $3 billion windfall that could end a financial squeeze that is weighing on his presidential run. Truth Social, quote, with few users and little revenue, is expected to start trading on the stock market next week at a staggering valuation of $5 billion. Donald Trump himself owns 60% of that, and the stock ticker will be called DJT. The vote, it comes, quote, after 2.5 years to take Truth Social public. That included charges of insider trading, a fine to settle an SEC investigation, all that has kept Trump on the platform. What they say is that this could be the financial windfall, Krystal, that he needs, which is very likely why he was pushing for this public, because he's got the $450 million judgment against him that remains there, and now he's got a stake that even though he's in a lockup period, he could conceivably get a loan or something like that against his valuation. That is if the stock actually holds at the value that they do want to put forward. Should note that the amount of money they make is not a lot. I'll just say that.
And they lose money in terms of profitability and revenue. They make a few $1 million a year. In terms of profit, they are losing tens of millions of dollars a year. So the idea that Truth Social is actually worth $5.5 billion is ridiculous, right? But it's actually a meme stock phenomenon. People who are supporters of Donald Trump,
DJT.
They're really into it, and so they've bid up the price, and he's trying to cash in on this popularity and the fact that this stock market. I mean, listen, the economy and the stock market are fake anyway, but they have wildly inflated the valuation of Truth. So there's no logical way is it possible that this is worth $1 billion or even like $1 million, given the fact that it is losing money consistently with no hope of sort of turning things around. So nevertheless, this could serve to benefit Trump. But there are some big caveats here. First of all, he is subject to a lockup agreement, which would ordinarily require him to hold on to that stock, I believe, for 6 months before he could sell it. So that's number one. Now, apparently there are some sort of like deals that could be struck and legal ways that he could get out of that requirement and be able to sell off some stock. But when you have that large of a stockholder and you have a meme stock that's like sort of artificially inflated, him selling significantly, it's probably going to trigger a lot of other people to sell significant quantities, and it could lead to a massive crash, wherein obviously your $3.5 million stake or whatever is now worth much, 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 much less than $3.5 million. So it's not a sure thing that this is going to rescue him from his financial difficulties. And we've discussed before, obviously, what the immediate financial difficulties are, which is primarily that he owes $500 million. That deadline for that bond payment is today. And as we're about to discuss, Letitia James has already moved to begin the process to seize some of his New York assets in Westchester County in particular in order to make good on that payment. He and his legal team have apparently gone to 30 different insurers, and they all said no, effectively, because you don't have enough cash and enough collateral to back it, and they don't really count real estate holdings. So is this going to rescue him in the near term? Don't know, but there are some challenges and some caveats with regard to this potential new fortune that he is coming into here.
As you said, today is actually a pretty critical day for Trump. Let's put it up there on the screen. They say that he's, quote, is expected to spend this morning, actually, while we're taping, in the courtroom of the New York judge who will then soon preside, presumably, over his criminal trial, quote, and ultimately possibly throw him behind bars. That is not even the legal predicament that actually worries Trump most this day. The hearing, in which is the so-called, the cover-up of the Stormy Daniels thing, is coming at the exact same time that he's got to fend off the $454 million judgment against him. The New York Attorney General, as I said, may begin collecting as soon as Monday. Quote, to avoid a mortal threat to the Trump organization, Trump then must persuade another company to post the bond on his behalf, promising it will then cover the judgment if he loses a pending appeal and fails to pay. Trump's lawyers said that securing the bond would be a, quote, practical impossibility because he would need to pledge some $550 million in cash and liquid investment as collateral on the bond, an admission that laid bare the former president's cash crunch. Under the, quote, unless he strikes, quote, an 11th hour deal, the New York State can then freeze his bank accounts and begin the long and complicated process of, quote, seizing some of his properties. All of these are the, quote, the two twin threats that crystallized two of Trump's greatest and longest held fears, an actual criminal conviction and a public perception that he does not have as much cash as he claims. On the cash front, I'm not defending him, but there's almost nobody who's worth billions of dollars who's got $500 million in liquid assets.
An astonishing amount of money.
Okay, I don't know much about the high-end financial system. It does seem a bit ridiculous to me that you have to have liquid investments worth the amount of the bond that you're supposed to pay. Because, like, okay, once again, only from reading, but don't people often put up, like, their house or their mortgage or something in a bail bond type situation? So why can't you use then the collateral of your real estate, holdings, even in the state of New York, which presumably are going to be taken and held anyway? I guess maybe it's more of a higher risk profile. Again, I don't understand bond law or bond financing, but it does seem crazy because if you had the liquid cash, then why wouldn't you just pay the bond instead of having a bond there anyway and incur some of the interest? I don't really understand.
Yeah, I don't either.
Right.
I mean, the one thing I read said that they don't even like to do a bond of this size.
Yeah, makes sense.
Even
Right.
is the problem. So they were willing to go as high as $100 million, but half a billion was like, I don't know about that. So I don't know. But apparently for whatever reasons, they are not feeling super comfy fronting the cash for this bond. So it is a genuine question mark what's going to happen in court today and what moves Letitia James is going to make next. Like I said, she started the process in Westchester County, one of his golf courses there, to potentially seize that, potentially fire sale it. So I don't know. New York Post had a report last week, for what it's worth, that Trump is thinking that maybe he's just not going to really take any action to try to solve this problem, put the ball in her court, and try to make as much political hay out of it as he can, with the hopes that in the future, because this is a complicated process, it would take a while to seize assets. Of course, it would take even longer to fire sale the assets, et cetera. He's hoping that the judgment is sort of knocked down before that happens and he can then reclaim these properties. But who knows? Who knows how this will all unfold?
Nobody has any idea. Let's go put this up there on the screen as well from the AP. This is probably actually the most important part, is that Trump has now reached a new joint fundraising agreement with the RNC, which will direct donations to his campaign and a political action committee that pays the former president's legal bills before the RNC gets a cut at all. Quote, the unorthodox diversion of Save America PAC makes it likely that Republican donors would see their money go to Trump's lawyers, who have now received $76 million over the last 2 years to defend him against 4 felony indictments and multiple civil cases. Some Republicans are already troubled that his takeover of the RNC would shortchange the cash-strapped party. Trump has already began inviting high-dollar donors to Palm Beach for multiple fundraisers against Joe Biden. And, quote, the invitation's fine print says that the donation to the Trump 47 committee will first be used to give the maximum amount allowed under federal law to the Trump campaign. Anything then left over will go towards a maximum contribution to Save America PAC. Anything then left over from that will go to the RNC and only after the state political parties. Noteworthy, though, that the first 3 out of the 4 that are listed there in the joint fundraising agreement will all go towards paying Trump's legal bills first before any sort of campaign apparatus. And I mean, Krystal, it doesn't take a genius to say that this is probably bad for the RNC, but in some ways, I almost just appreciate the brazenness of this because the RNC is Trump. Trump is the Republican Party. So, everything is enshrined totally with him. Even the campaign is more about him than it is about anything. So, yeah, if you're donating to the campaign or whatever, you're donating to Donald Trump's, personal interests. That's basically just the way it's been the entire time. So, if anything, this is actually very ideological consistent with the Trump kind of takeover of the party, I would say.
And I don't know, but I would suspect that a good number of the people who are giving money to Trump don't really have a problem
I don't think
with
they
that
care.
because
Yeah, I
I
agree.
think they see part of this campaign as this like, crusade for him personally and to get him out of his legal travails, et cetera. So, they deserve transparency around what is going on here. But it is an astonishing situation where so many of the millions that are being raised are going directly to his personal benefit to try to, get him out of this legal jeopardy that he's in. And his fundraising hasn't been going particularly well. I just pulled this up. These numbers actually just came out. So federal campaign finance filings that were released last week showed Trump's political operation at a serious disadvantage, struggling to catch up to Biden. This is from ABC News and the Democratic Party. Biden and the Dems raised $53 million last month, ended February with $155 million cash on hand. Trump's campaign and his Save America Political Action Committee, 2 key groups in his political operation, reported raising a combined $15.9 million in February, ended the month with more than $37 million on hand. So a severe disparity between the Trump operation and between the Democratic Party and Joe Biden's operation. And then when you add to that the fact that they have to shoulder the burden, not just of running a campaign, but also of paying these massive legal bills on behalf of Donald Trump, yeah, it puts him at a real cash disadvantage. Now, how much does that matter? Obviously, money wasn't enough to save Hillary Clinton in 2016, even though she dramatically out-fundraised Donald Trump. So you don't want to read too much into it. But certainly if you're trying to campaign, you're trying to get the word out, you're trying to, pay staff, you're trying to put your message out there in terms of ad dollars, which is what a lot of this money goes to. And it's a problem for you if you don't have a lot in the bank, bottom line.
Absolutely. Let's put the last element up there, please, on the screen. This was also very important. Plans were actually recently scrapped for that Trump rally in Arizona. 2 sources cited their desire to save money to attend a more politically advantageous event in Ohio last weekend. But that means that Trump's last trip to Arizona remains October 9, 2022. Pretty important because didn't exactly go so well for him last time in October 9 of 2022, whenever he was stumping for Kari Lake. Presumably he will return to the state to stump for Kari Lake again. The question, though, remains, is this actually going to hinder the campaign? And I don't think we can't, it's complicated. I mean, to a certain extent, I do think it is overblown, some of this like investment in get out the vote technology and all this other stuff. A lot of it comes down to whether people are even interested in voting or not, which is mostly derivative of the national news environment. We can't say it hurts either, right? To have this major investment in door knocking and in the software and in the actual machinery of getting people out there. But Trump has so much enthusiasm that it's not even necessarily that he needs money or not. I mean, if money really mattered, then Hillary would have beat Trump, easily back in 2016.
My theory when it comes to money and how much it matters in terms of any sort of political campaign is that the more local the race is, the more the money actually matters.
Great point.
So since when you're talking about a presidential contest, like who in America doesn't know who Joe Biden and Donald Trump are?
Yes.
Who in America doesn't have some sort of opinion about both of these 2 individuals? And who in America doesn't know, like, when the election of them is coming up and how the mechanics of that all work? I'm not going to say it doesn't matter at all, but I do think that the higher you go up the sort of food chain with regard to political campaigns, the less impactful it is because earned media and the national political climate just becomes so incredibly important. Now, there are certain things like, for example, there's been this whole question of how the Trump campaign is going to deal with mail-in voting this time around. Are they going to fully embrace it? Are they going to fully run that like mail-in voting turnout campaign? If he had done that last time around, he may well be president right now.
Right.
So he seems to still personally be kind of reluctant about it, but the people around him seem to have realized that it was a mistake to forego pushing mail-in balloting. So, having that operation fully funded, that is the sort of thing that can make a difference on the margins. And look, we're talking about an election that is probably going to come down to a very narrow margin. So in that way, it is impactful. There's also something to say about the fact that previously Trump was a real fundraising juggernaut when it came to the grassroots.
That's right.
And there actually has been a bipartisan phenomenon recently of grassroots fundraising really sort of drying up. I think there's just a lot of like apathy and, disgust with the political system where people aren't feeling that hopeful, like, oh, there's, something positive I can invest my money in, et cetera. And he has just tapped his people out too. I mean, the number of times that he hits his fundraising fundraising list over and over and over. He really has tapped them out, not only for himself, but for other Republicans as well. But it is, it's also an indication of a sort of waning amount of grassroots enthusiasm that he's not still able to draw from that well to the extent that he was able to in the past. So I think that also is worth noting.
Keep this in mind too. Trump had tons of money in 2020. He lost. So, I mean, he had more money in that campaign, I think more than almost double or something like that. He had the same joint fundraising agreement with the RNC. But then remember what we learned in October? That the huge amounts of the money they brought in was just spent trying to derive even more money from, it was like Brad Parscale, I think.
Oh, yeah.
And Jared Kushner.
Yeah.
They wasted billions and billions of dollars.
They spent wildly.
Right, exactly. So money, it can be helpful. Obviously, no one's going to discount it, but a lot of it will come down to national trends as well. So just keep that in mind. And of course, the media, how they cover it, how people are feeling about the election, that's probably the single most important aspect.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.